Incredible CEO disappears in shocking twist minutes later. The hotel is closed, and staff fired. Elise Carter stood in the Lakeshore Suites' elegant lobby, her fingers tracing the polished surface of the check-in counter as chaos erupted around her. She watched as panic ignited in the eyes of her staff, her second family, with the sudden news of their new CO's disappearance. Mouths agape, eyes wide with disbelief, her loyal employees were being ushered towards the exit, their faces mirroring the dread that coiled in her stomach. Within minutes, everything her father built stood on the precipice of collapse. Heart pounding in her chest, Elise questioned her direction. In one sensational twist, everything she held dear was crumbling. They had just rolled out a new plan that promised stability. Elise had roved the halls offering reassurance, drawing strength from the sacred bond forged with her staff over the years. But reality shifted the moment the corporate executives deemed an investigation necessary. She grappled with her choices. How could they just walk away from lives and dreams that had become intertwined in this place? The thought of them lost, of her father's legacy crumbling without a fight, fueled a fire within her. As her heart raced, internal conflict tugged violently at her. She longed to protect them, yet feared she'd carry the blame should everything go wrong. Her mind spun she was a manager, a protector, yet today her power felt stripped away. She blinked back something like tears, feeling both the weight of defeat and a sense of indignation. This was not who they were. How could she let an outsider dictate the fates of those she loved? With each employee dismissed, she felt the floor beneath her rock. Not only was the hotel being torn from her, but also the family she had cultivated. Was she sacrificing their futures by merely allowing the corporate machine to churn on without a fight? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Fueled by desperation, Elise plunged into the murky depths of a conspiracy that had begun to unfold before her. Each corner turned unveiled another secret. Emails obliterating promises made, meetings cloaked in shadows, and fragments of loyalty ripped apart. Those employed by Lakeshore Suites weren't just numbers. They were human stories, dreams intertwined within these walls. The stakes grew higher with each lead she followed. Old guests, whose lives had been touched by the hotel, stood firmly by her side, their loyalty lighting the fire of insurrection within her. But intermingling with this sense of purpose was another voice, an ever-looming anxiety that whispered of catastrophic failure. With every new detail she uncovers, her hands trembled against the pages of incriminating files. Was the CEO's disappearance part of a larger game? What if the steps she took to reclaim her past also led her deeper into a darkness where uncertainty reigned? Elise stared at the documents spread before her, each piece of evidence weighing heavier than the last. The realization sunk in she was trapped, navigating a web spun from deceit and obligation. The heart of the Lakeshore Suites pulsed not within its luxurious walls, but through its employees. Torn between gratitude and fear, she stood poised on the edge of a decision that could unravel everything. With the clock ticking and her resolve hardening, one question loomed larger than any. Could saving her father's legacy actually cost her everything in return? The early morning light filtered through the grand windows of the Lakeshore Suites, illuminating the chaos that seemed to grow with every passing hour. Elise glanced at the hotel's empty lobby, memories flooding over her of vibrant laughter and bustling guests. Today, however, felt as if the air had thickened with uncertainty, like a fog of dread clinging to her every thought. She had taken a deep breath, trying to gather her scattered courage, and now faced the vortex of possibility unraveling before her. She paced the length of the check-in desk, contemplating her plan of action. She had poured everything into this hotel, and while anyone else might see the looming bankruptcy as a reason to flee, Elise felt an overwhelming urge to fight. The cold steel of defeat scraped at her resolve, But she couldn't linger in the shadows of despair. Her instincts screamed at her to become a beacon for her team, to offer them strength rather than succumb to hasty fears. Picking up her phone, she navigated contacts filled with numbers she hadn't called in far too long. A deep breath steadied her hand. Each name sparked a thread in her memory: mentors, hoteliers, vendors. Each connection had the potential to either pull her further into the desperate depths or offer a lifeline of wisdom. She dismissed the doubt creeping into her mind. This was her moment to pivot, to exhibit a formidable determination reminiscent of her father's unwavering spirit. "Hello, Miranda? It's Elise. I need your help," she said, channeling her plea into the delicately vibrated receiver. Miranda was a former manager from a rival establishment, a fierce believer in ethical management who had navigated similar storms successfully. Within minutes, they were deep in conversation, navigating the twists of the hotel industry and unearthing strategies Elise had long since shelved. The enormity of the situation struck hard, but rather than crumbling beneath its weight, Elise transformed pressure into momentum. As they hashed out ideas, a newfound clarity emerged. A message resonated in her mind. Updates from the investigation might open doors for allies yet unseen, or at the very least, offer insights into the hiring chaos. "Miranda, what if we could stage an event that reinforces our employees' stories?" she said, her voice growing in confidence. "We could rally community support to prove we're more than just a hotel, more than just an eviction notice." As they brainstormed potential themes and outreach methods, Elise's determination solidified. She realized each decision was a stitch in the fabric of the Lakeshore Suites. Each thread needed to tell a story, intertwining loyalty with a vibrant community. She grasped the sheer power of authentic connection. Her people needed her to stand tall, to assert that their legacy was worth fighting for. When Elise hung up, a sense of resolve powered her next steps. She called for a meeting with the remaining staff, knowing they needed to rally together before the impending decision from corporate arrived. Each face held stories. Each person was an integral part of the hotel's legacy. Elise needed to unite them, not drown in pity, but grow in strength. Gathering her courage, she stepped before them, feeling the weight of the room's expectancy. As she shared her vision, something inside her clicked. An unyielding belief in her leadership potential began to dawn. But as the words flowed, a hint of doubt lingered. Would they trust her enough to join her in this unforeseen confrontation? With renewed purpose, Elise recognized that every historical moment of adversity could ignite her personal growth. She was on the verge of becoming something greater than the sum of her fears. And as her confidence soared, so did the stakes. The time would come to confront corporate powers, and the battle for both her family's legacy and her newfound identity awaited her. In that moment of reckoning, a chilling thought broke through the excitement. Could her newfound resolve be enough to face those hidden threats lurking in the folds of the corporate world? The true test of her leadership abilities would soon be upon her, and the clock was ticking. Elise stepped back from the gathering, her pulse quickening with the urgency of the moment. She had shared her vision and, to her surprise, witnessed a flicker of enthusiasm grow within the circle of her employees. Their faces, once marked by despair, began to soften, their eyes reflecting a light of shared determination. Yet, lingering in the air was an unspoken anxiety. Could they really succeed against the looming threat of corporate indifference? The meeting buzzed with cautious hope, as discussions morphed into animated exchanges. Ideas flowed, each one building on the last. Yet Elise could feel the weight of the corporate decision creeping closer. The clock was more than ticking. It was a countdown, suffused with expectations and possible heartache. She took a moment to observe the team, noticing how the past frustration and exhaustion had seemingly been drained from their expressions. Each emerging idea, whether a mix of hopeful strategy or a simple insight into the hotel's unique history, became a powerful thread weaving them together. They were not just employees at the Lakeshore Suites. They were a part of her family's legacy. Yet, beneath that optimistic facade resided a gnawing unease. What if their collective effort fell short? In that moment of clarity, Elise became acutely aware of the monumental responsibility resting on her shoulders. It wasn't just about preserving a hotel. It was about protecting a dream steeped in her father's tenacity, memories embedded in every corner, and relationships fostered over countless hospitable moments. After the meeting, Elise retreated to her office, her mind swirling with plans and doubts. She grabbed her notepad and began jotting down actionable steps. But as she wrote, her thoughts spiraled. What if the corporate team dismissed their efforts outright? All those conversations, the new energy she had infused into the staff, what if it would come to nothing? No, she thought defiantly. She would not give up without a fight. Elise decided to delve deeper, reaching out to those outside her immediate circle. She scrapped her comfortable routine to immerse herself in strategies and case studies, despite the mental fatigue creeping in. Days blended with nights as she researched hotel acquisitions, industry downturns, and stories of businesses that had rebounded from the brink. Yet for every piece of advice gleaned, there was another facet of reassurance she lacked. She felt the isolation creeping in, almost suffocating. The weight of leadership was heavy, especially when the decisions she made could alter lives irrevocably. Vulnerability loomed large. Could she articulate her vision effectively enough to sway corporate powers? Then, a breakthrough came when Elise identified a common thread in her research. The most powerful resumes were often backed by personal narratives. That's it, she thought. If she could encapsulate the heart of the Lakeshore Suites through a compelling story, it might resonate with the individuals making decisions. It wasn't just an appeal to logic. It was an emotional call to passion. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Elise meticulously crafted this narrative. She poured her spirit into the words, recounting tales of joy shared within the hotel's walls and highlighting every person who had made those moments possible. This wasn't just business. It was profound legacy. Exhausted yet exhilarated, she saved her document, whispering a silent prayer. But a new wave of apprehension washed over her. Just how would the corporate team respond to her passionate plea for their legacy? Would they see the value she sought to preserve, or merely mountains of red ink? Stepping away from the computer, she glanced at the wall clock ticking softly. Time felt more precious than ever. The meeting with the corporate representatives was scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. As she prepared herself for bed, one final thought consumed her. Would she find the courage to defend what truly mattered? And as she closed her eyes, she felt an unyielding instinct course through her. Tomorrow's confrontation might reshape her leadership journey forever, but was she prepared to confront the hidden depths of her potential and perhaps herself? Elise awoke, heart racing, her mind ablaze with thoughts as dawn broke gently through her window. The day ahead loomed like a tidal wave, both thrilling and terrifying. She had crafted her narrative, but how could she refine her presentation to imbue it with conviction? After a quick shower, she paced her room. Each footfall echoed her trepidation, stirring a cacophony of fears. What if she stumbled over her words? Or worse, what if her passion failed to ignite even the faintest spark in her corporate audience? She needed poise, she needed confidence, she needed to become the embodiment of her own vision. Seated at her kitchen table, an old ceramic coffee mug in hand, Elise meticulously reviewed her notes. The ideas spilled onto the page: clarity, warmth, authenticity. Yet a nagging voice urged her to strip away doubt. For every persuasive term she scribbled, shadows of uncertainty crept back. Would sharing her father's philosophy as a driving force resonate? Or would it merely be dismissed as emotional sentimentality? Deciding the best way to combat her anxiety was to prepare herself, Elise illustrated her key points on a whiteboard, converting abstract words into visual concepts. She needed more than an outline. She needed a performance. Captivating an audience was an art, she mused. Later, Elise called in her employee, Lucas, a recent hire whose enthusiasm had never flagged. He was fresh out of hospitality school yet brimming with fresh ideas. If anyone could provide an enthusiastic perspective, it was him. Lucas arrived with a bright smile, and Elise welcomed him into her makeshift brainstorming sanctuary. She reviewed her narrative, watching Lucas's eyes widen with intrigue and surprise at the richness of her stories. Make them feel it, Lucas advised. Leaning against the wall, his youthful exuberance infectious. People connect with feelings. Elise. They remember moments, not metrics. Her heartbeat settled for the first time as they worked through the presentation together. They continued refining her storytelling, emphasizing emotional connection while bolstering it with statistics that demonstrated the hotel's success, rooted in community ties. He believed in her vision, and their synergy sparked a creative energy she hadn't experienced before. As they delved deeper, Elise found herself unearthing insights about her leadership style. Lucas pointed out, "You're not just selling a hotel. You're defending a legacy. Have you ever thought about the power of leadership in a personal context? You're not just a CEO, you're a storyteller." Those words struck Elise like a lightning bolt. The weight of her role shifted in that instant. Leadership wasn't solely about fiscal responsibility. It was about rallying souls towards a vision. She sensed a hidden strength blossoming within her, rooted not in authority but in authenticity. Right, but what if they're resistant? She questioned, the shadows creeping back. Lucas met her gaze unwaveringly. Then you'll adapt. Resilience is a leader's greatest tool. You need to reach them at their core, he asserted. As the hours flew by, Elise cultivated an unwavering vision, a mixture of heartfelt stories balanced with diligent preparation. She envisioned the corporate representatives, and in her mind, she transformed them from faceless suits into individuals, capable of feeling the emotions she conveyed, capable of understanding. Later that night, as she finally retired, the echoes of the day slumbered on her heart, energy mixed with fatigue. Would the corporate representatives see her as an innovative leader tomorrow? Could she command respect while laying bare the soul of her family's hotel? Her thoughts spiraled, a question lingering like a ghost. Was she ready to face the relentless tide of scrutiny? With a determined heart, Elise fell into a restless sleep, feeling the weight of destiny pressing against her chest. Tomorrow would reveal not only her future but perhaps the depth of her own courage. Then, an unsettling notion seized her, leaving her body frozen with anxiety. What if the corporate team had already made their decision before she ever got to speak? Morning arrived too quickly for Elise. She awoke to the sound of her phone buzzing relentlessly, an unsettling reminder that reality was knocking at her door. She dismissed the alarm, lying there, staring at the ceiling, mind racing again. What if today didn't change anything? What if this was just another day in a long line of days spent trying and failing to assert control over her fate? After breakfast, she made her way to the hotel, each step building her anticipation alongside a growing tide of apprehension. The hotel lobby, usually bustling with energy and life, felt stagnant, the usual vibrancy subdued by the weight of her anticipation. She caught a glimpse of her reflection in the polished front doors and felt a surge of unease ripple through her. As she entered the boardroom, Elise fought to suppress her nerves. The sleek, intimidating faces of the corporate team awaited her, a collection of sharp suits that criticized and dissected from behind fortress-like tables. They were the gatekeepers of her vision, the judges of her story. Yet, somewhere within that anxiety, a flicker of resolve ignited. She remembered Lucas's words, "Make them feel it." Elise steadied herself as she arranged her notes. The air thickened with unspoken judgments as she cleared her throat. Would her authentic self shine through even in this sterile setting? She opened her presentation with a story from her childhood, recalling summer evenings spent in the hotel lobby, dreaming of the legacy she would build. Seeing the corporate team's bemused expressions sent a tremor of doubt through her. Did they see her as naive? But as she spoke about her father's philosophy, the way his principles wove into the fabric of the hotel, something shifted. A faint interest rippled across their faces, momentarily illuminating their rigid expressions. Pulling the threads of emotional connection tighter, she interspersed data about guest satisfaction with tales of the unique experiences her family cultivated over the decades. Suddenly, she caught sight of Greg, the lead corporate strategist, rolling his eyes at her anecdotes. The sharp critique brewed within her. In that moment of her vulnerability, the presence of his dismissive gaze felt like an assault. Was he the embodiment of everything she resented about the bureaucracy? Fueled by a sudden surge of confidence, she leaned forward, directing her voice towards him. "You may think my stories are just tales, but they are the bedrock of what sets us apart in the hospitality world. This isn't just about numbers. It's about creating genuine connections." Her heart raced with the audacity of her challenge. A silence fell, charged with tension. Had she crossed a line? Elise felt her reflexes prompt her to retract, but she held her ground, fingering the edge of the table, looking around at the rest of the corporate team. Their expressions, previously indifferent, now revealed a flicker of engagement, a glimmer of curiosity. Elise seized the moment, shifting gears to present her innovative strategies, emphasizing funnels of revenue attached to emotional stories. She could feel an internal shift as she positioned herself not just as a leader, but as a visionary willing to challenge the status quo. Yet, with every compelling point she made, Greg's demeanor remained unchanged, a mask of skepticism. The clock wound down, and she sensed the conversation would pivot soon. With each tick of the clock, Elise felt her pulse quickening, her resolve unyielding. Just as she began to wrap up, Greg leaned forward, his voice cutting through her momentum. "Elise, you're passionate, but can emotion carry us through a challenging market?" The weight of his question loomed heavy. The room felt smaller, and her confidence trembled momentarily under the intensity of examination. "But what if passion is our competitive advantage?" She shot back impulsively, heart pounding. She was pushing boundaries, her voice gaining a defiance she hadn't realized was there. Would they appreciate her spirit, or would it all backfire? As the meeting concluded, Elise left the room with a mixture of triumph and uncertainty. She had opened a dialogue but awoke a larger question within her: was she equipped to face the inevitable backlash if the board could not break free of their metrics-driven mindset? The day had barely unfolded, and already it was clear that the true battle lay ahead, not just against external forces, but against the internal doubts that still gripped her. With her heart racing and a fresh wave of anxiety, she turned to leave the meeting room, determined to claim her narrative yet uncertain of the price she might pay for her newfound assertiveness. Would she rise above their doubts, or would she be swept away in the undertow? Elise walked down the long, marble-floored corridor of the hotel, her mind swirling with the echoes of the meeting. Each step reverberated with the uncertainty of her confrontation. Doubts crept in like shadows, fluttering against her resolve. Had she been too aggressive? That last retort had come from a place of instinct, yet she could feel Greg's skepticism lingering, like a weight pressing against her chest. Would they see her as a threat or a breath of fresh air? The glass walls felt more like a cage than a passageway, reflecting her uncertainty. She paused at a window overlooking the city, watching the bustling streets below, people moving onward, each with their stories and struggles. It anchored her in the realization that her narrative was also part of this vast tapestry. With deliberate breaths, she refocused her thoughts. Elise maneuvered through the hotel's operations, her relationships with the staff comfortably assuring. They had always been her allies. "Good morning, Elise," called out Mia, the front desk manager, with a brightness that almost flickered against the dullness of the boardroom. "Hey, Mia," she replied, forcing a smile against the backdrop of her anxiety. Her mind flashed back to Greg. A competitor's words sliced through her memory. Emotion doesn't translate to a profit margin. It would be easy to let those words seep into her team, to share her anxiety, but she knew better. Strength and clarity were essential now. Desiring connection and motivation from her staff, she gathered them for an impromptu meeting in the courtyard, where the sun spilled soft light through the lush greenery. Here was a realm where passion thrived, and her insecurities felt distant. As her team assembled, the collective mood shifted, her resolve invigorated them. "Today, I want to talk about how we can transform our guests' experiences, not just to be successful, but to foster something authentic that represents what we stand for." Her voice held a conviction that surprised even herself. They were not just employees. They were custodians of a legacy, and this idea rippled through the group. Elise noticed nods of approval, encouragement in their eyes. As she allocated time for each person to share thoughts on emotional connections with guests, the room became alive with ideas about personalized services, guest stories, and community ties. Each voice added a brick to the foundation she envisioned building. When Arnold, the head of housekeeping, suggested creating a memory wall showcasing stories from guests over the years and inviting guests to contribute, Elise felt a surge of inspiration. This was the essence of hospitality connection beyond transactions. Encouraged by their enthusiasm, Elise broke into a smile. But as she listened to the ideas flowing, an unsettling thought danced at the edges of her awareness. How could she turn this passion into a tangible result that could sway the board against the cold steel of Greg's assessment? Later, with the meeting energy still buzzing, Elise retreated to her office. As she sat at her desk, she mapped out an actionable strategy, intertwining her emotional vision with analytical projections. The urgency to prove herself to the corporate team resurfaced. With every click of her keyboard, Elise planned meticulously, for the stakes had never felt higher. Yet a troubling notion kept gnawing at her. What if her innovations were shot down yet again by a system that thrived on metrics alone? Would she be able to withstand the pushback from Greg and his allies? This wasn't just about the project. It was about stamping her identity on the family name and ensuring its survival. Just as she recorded her action plan, her phone buzzed angrily. It was a notification, a news alert. Panic gripped her as she read the headlines. Hotel staff fired after management shakeup, CEO missing. Fear crashed down like a tidal wave. Was that her name they were referring to? Her heart pounded as she considered the implications. Had she miscalculated? Before she could grasp the gravity, a sense of urgency propelled her to dig deeper. The clock was ticking, and the stakes had risen dramatically. Would she embody the leadership required to confront this unforeseen challenge? Or would it unravel her efforts? Elise stood, determined to face whatever awaited her next, knowing that if today had tested her resilience, tomorrow would demand something even greater. Elise paced her office, her thoughts racing as the news blared ominously in her mind. The media storm looming over the hotel felt suffocating. She flipped through the headlines, her stomach tightening at every mention of layoffs and the mysterious absence of the CEO. Was she even prepared to step into such an unpredictable void? Were Greg and the board already strategizing her downfall while she clung to her ideals? Shoving aside her mounting anxiety, Elise forced herself into action. A familiar surge of resolve gripped her as she reached for her notepad, the inked pages now lit with scribbles of her ambitious plan. The notion of a memory wall was not just a whimsical idea. It could become an authentic part of the hotel's identity, something to showcase its heart to the board, something undeniable. Elise's mind danced between creative solutions as she began jotting down specifics. What if she paired the memory wall with social media engagements? She could invite guests back to share their stories live, creating buzz around the hotel's unique offering, providing authentic experiences that resonated with the emotional core of hospitality. Could turn the narrative from a boardroom battle over metrics into a compelling tale of human connection. But as excitement began to lift her spirits, doubt crept in once again. Greg's dismissive remarks echoed in the back of her mind, stingingly familiar. She could hear him saying, "Numbers speak louder than feelings." For every ornate idea Elise considered, a part of her questioned if it would withstand the cold scrutiny of financial reports. And with ceaseless changes swirling around the company, the board might become even less likely to embrace elements beyond the numbers. She paused, uncertainty washing over her like a wave of cold water. It wasn't merely her strategic innovations at stake. It was her worth as a leader. What if they refused to accept her vision? What if the very authenticity she championed was criticized as a naive idealism? Silencing those thoughts would require more than mere optimism. It would require evidence, a confluence of passion and rationalization. Determined to find strength, Elise stood firm and stepped away from her desk. She needed insights not just from her own mind but from those around her. They had been resonating with her vision just days before. Were their heartbeats still aligned with hers? She picked up her phone and texted her team, asking them to convene once more, this time in the lounge where ideas could flow freely against the backdrop of worried whispers. As they gathered, the atmosphere felt thick with trepidation. Elise inhaled deeply, each breath a tentative step toward confidence. "I know we're facing uncertainty," she began, her voice steady despite the thrum of doubt. "But what we draw from our guests today can steer our narrative in this crisis. Creating a memory wall and generating unique contests will show the board that we are more than numbers, we are the heart of this hotel." As the team brainstormed, a curious thing began to happen. Their ideas started stacking atop one another, growing as Elise infused hope into the room. Instead of retreating from the impending storm, they visualized harnessing it, crafting social experiences that could not only highlight the hotel, but bring its community together. Yet a shadow loomed in the back of Elise's mind. In doing this, would she be putting her career on the line, a risky gamble against the cold sights of the board? As each idea resonated louder, Elise felt a transformative energy sparking within her, a recognition that she wasn't just acting on behalf of the hotel. She was asserting her vision as an integral part of its future. But just as courage surged, doubt curled around her resolve. What if everything she was building turned to rubble in the face of indifference? The team's excitement acted as a balm for her doubts. But as the brainstorming session wrapped up, Elise combated an unsettling realization. The countdown was unforgiving, and she had to prepare for worse than cold numbers. Confronting Greg and the board would be inevitable. And now more than ever, she needed to solidify her beliefs into a solidified plan that could resonate beyond charts and tables. As they dispersed, a sense of urgency propelled Elise to work through the night, the stakes rising with every passing hour. Could she transform her passion into something that could sway the board? Or were her ambitions destined to clash against relentless scrutiny? With sleepless determination fueling her resolve, she stared out into the city skyline, its pulse echoing her own. The darkness felt heavy, but the dawn of possibility shone dimly in the distance. Tomorrow would mean facing the board. Would she seize the chance to showcase not just numbers, but the value of human experience? Or would this opportunity slip through her fingers like sand? The time had come for her to confront the true test of her leadership and perhaps even the fight for her own identity. The morning light cut through the haze of doubt as Elise prepared herself for the day ahead. She stood in front of the mirror, scrutinizing her reflection, disheveled hair, dark circles under her eyes, a worn blazer struggling to convey authority. The current shape of her self-image clashed violently with the leader she aspired to be. The chaotic emotions swirling within her echoed her messy appearance. Could she truly command the respect required in a crisis? Taking a steadying breath, she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, compelling herself to focus. Today wasn't just about the board meeting. It was about her declaration of self-worth. Elise visualized the vibrant memory wall, rich with stories that could reshape perceptions. But it hinged entirely on her ability to present not just an idea but a compelling narrative infused with the hotel's core values. Her phone buzzed with an avalanche of notifications as she made her way to the conference room. A mix of supportive messages from her team contrasted sharply with the unending tide of negative headlines about the company. It was like standing on a precipice over an abyss. Her team's hope leaned precariously against the looming threat of failure. Elise entered the conference room, the atmosphere laden with tension. Greg sat at the head of the table, smug confidence emanating from him like a toxic fog. As she settled into her chair, she felt the sharp blade of his gaze cutting across the room. Every heartbeat intensified the weight of scrutiny from the board, their impassive expressions swirling into a vortex of anxiety. How could she possibly shift their focus? She opened her presentation, her hands trembling slightly as the first slide emerged, a collage of guest stories, smiles captured in candid moments that defined the hotel's legacy. The first reactions were subdued. She could almost hear their thoughts. Where's the data? Ignoring the disapproval, she pressed on, weaving a tale that bridged human connection with profitability. At first, their faces betrayed skepticism, and she felt a familiar wave of self-doubt wash over her. Yet, as she recounted heartwarming anecdotes from guests, she settled into an unexpected rhythm. The analogies flowed like water, framing the memory wall not just as an artistic endeavor, but a strategic investment in emotional engagement. It was about the authenticity that could draw customers back and yield lasting loyalty, a detail Greg would never appreciate. As she spoke, Elise noticed the board members shifting. Their expressions softened as she painted vivid pictures of the experiences that had shaped the hotel and its patrons. Each story became a thread in a larger tapestry, a display of the hotel as a safe haven in turbulent times. She dared to believe that passion could spur action and that her authentic vision might just resonate. But then Greg interjected, his tone dripping with condescension. Emotions don't count when the numbers don't add up. Elise, he sneered, dismissing her passionate plea with a wave of his hand. A strike to her already fragile confidence reverberated like an alarm bell. Yet this bond is our foundation, she shot back, finding unexpected strength in her voice. When people feel valued, they don't just stay, they bring others. This isn't whimsy. It's long-term sustainability. Sparks of challenge ignited in various corners of the room. Some board members exchanged glances, their intrigue subtly shifting. Could she turn the tide? But a nagging doubt clawed at the edges of her conviction. Would Greg's entrenched skepticism overrule her budding momentum? Elise's mind raced. She had to capitalize on the window her words opened. With conviction rippling through her, she emphasized the potential of their guests' stories to become a marketing magnet. And if their initiatives proved unsuccessful, she vowed to accept any fallout personally, willing to take the burden of belief onto herself. Just as she reached the climax of her argument, the room's atmosphere thickened. The door swung open, and a colleague stumbled in. With a look of panic. The media has just reported the hotel could close permanently if financial review doesn't improve immediately. A wave of shocked silence descended. The board shifted in their seats, and Elise's heart plummeted. Her chance to transform the narrative hung on the precipice of an urgent reality. Would the culmination of her ideas withstand this new threat, or evaporate under the glaring scrutiny of failing financial reports? Determined to seize this moment, Elise's resolve crystallized. Perhaps the memory wall could serve as more than a surface-level initiative, it could symbolize their collective spirit. But a stark realization loomed. Real change wouldn't just depend on her presentation. It required alliances, strategic forthrightness, and a deeper understanding of how to blend emotion with measurable outcomes. The stakes had escalated, and the countdown was on, not just for her vision, but for the soul of the hotel itself. As she locked eyes with Greg across the table, the confrontation loomed closer. Would they rise together to face this calamity, or would she remain trapped beneath his shadow, forever fighting her own battles alone? Elise blinked, the air suddenly thick with a blend of fear and uncertainty that hung over the boardroom like a storm cloud. Her heart hammered against her ribcage, threatening to drown out the soft murmurs of disbelief around her. The news felt surreal, as if the universe had conspired chaos at the most critical moment of her career. How could this happen? She thought, panic bubbling within her as she tried to regain composure. Greg's expression brimmed with a mix of disbelief and opportunity. He could almost taste her faltering confidence. Elise quickly scanned the room, analyzing the board members' faces. Some bore worry, others frustration. But one thing was clear, they were all looking to her for answers. The silence was suffocating. The absence of her previously resonant stories echoed loudly in the void. What began as an opportunity to showcase the value of emotional resonance now morphed into a battle for survival, a desperate fight not just for her ideas, but for the hotel itself. Let us not react rashly, Elise interjected, her voice steadier than she felt. She had to summon every ounce of her courage, every fragment of self-worth that she had painstakingly pieced together. What's done is done. Let us focus on our immediate strategy. We can't afford to panic, she continued, heart rate surging as she stepped further into the role of decision-maker. She could feel Greg's eyes narrowing, as if looking for the slightest weakness. Would she crumble or stand her ground? Yet doubt began to claw at her again. What did she know about strategy, about finance? But quickly, Elise shoved those thoughts aside. She shifted in her chair, leaning toward the board members, making sure they saw the fire in her eyes. If the hotel closes, we lose not just our jobs but everything we've built together. That memory wall? It's more than a project, it's our lifeline. We need everyone on board, ready to take action. Greg scoffed, but this time it felt different. The room was alive with curiosity, a subtle shift. Conversations flickered among the board members as they engaged in a race of ideas rather than just accepting Greg's dominance. Elise had ignited a spark. Now she needed to nurture it. Let us analyze our liabilities. Where can we trim costs without compromising guest experience? She proposed, focusing on the tangible. Tentative heads nodded, the shift in energy both reassuring and exhilarating. It was the urgency she had feared, but it was also a sudden realization of a profound capability within herself, a leader in crisis. Each suggestion emerged like a lifeline, and Elise skillfully weaved through strategies of employee loyalty programs, redesigned marketing campaigns focusing on the stories she had shared, and collaborations with local businesses to drive foot traffic. With every idea she proposed, her confidence surged. Yet, even as she spoke, Elise felt the heat of Greg's glaring eyes. He was calculating, assessing how to undermine her. But that uncertainty morphed into a concrete resolve. She would not cave. She would stand against his scrutiny. As the meeting progressed, she felt her vision expand beyond just that boardroom. It became a cause worth fighting for, a vision that encapsulated everyone's hopes and dreams. Something that could grow from the ashes of doubt and fear. The meeting eventually drew to a close, but tensions simmered. Elise locked gazes with Greg, who remained inscrutable, the corner of his mouth tugging in a bemused smirk. She had gained ground, yet she sensed the looming confrontation that awaited her. As the board members filed out, some offering cautious affirmations, Elise stayed behind, wrestling with her emotions. She had made progress, but could she assert her authority with him in the room? The question lingered, a pit in her stomach. Could she continue to build alliances that would protect her vision amidst the unsettling waters of corporate turmoil? Or would Greg's formidable presence eclipse her emerging leadership? Moments stretched into eternity as she braced herself for their inevitable collision. Elise breathed deeply, preparing for the reality that awaited her. It was now or never. The time had come to face Greg, her adversary, and confront the confrontation that would define not just her career but her very identity. What would she discover about herself in the exchange that loomed ahead? Elise stood outside the boardroom, her pulse thundering in her ears. This moment was the culmination of everything she had fought for. And yet now that the time had arrived, she felt both fear and determination engulf her. The stakes had escalated from saving the hotel to preserving her very identity as a leader. Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the door and stepped inside. Greg was already seated, his expression a calculated blend of skepticism and intrigue. The tension in the air was palpable, settling thickly between them. "I see you've managed to rally some support," he said, smirking slightly as he studied her. "But the real question is whether that's enough to save the bottom line." Elise refused to let his dismissive tone shake her. "It's not just about numbers," she replied, her voice steady, her resolve unyielding. "It's about the stories we share with our guests and the culture we cultivate here. That's what will drive loyalty and profits in the long run." He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms as if considering her carefully. "Stories don't pay salaries, Elise. You have to understand that this isn't a charity. This is business." That familiar pang of doubt threatened to seep in again, but Elise pushed it aside. She had come too far, transformed too much to backtrack now. This hotel was built on real stories, Greg. The legacy isn't just an abstract concept. It's our unique selling proposition. People choose to stay here precisely because it means something to them. The silence stretched taut, as if they were both waiting for the other to blink. Greg's cool facade seemed unyielding, but for the first time, she sensed just the faintest crack of curiosity behind his eyes. "I've dealt with the industry for years," he began, his voice measured, as if he were peeling back layers of her argument one by one. "Metrics are what drive decisions. I'm afraid a nostalgic narrative isn't going to cut it." Elise leaned forward, her voice unwavering. But those very metrics you speak of are inextricably tied to the experiences we offer. Customer satisfaction doesn't just happen. It's cultivated through connection. A guest's emotional experience translates directly to repeat visits and referrals, and those translate into profits. A slight shadow crossed his face, as if he were grappling with a thought too profound to dismiss outright. Interesting perspective, he conceded, his tone softer, though still guarded. Encouraged, Elise pressed on. Let us implement the memory wall, but let us also track its success digitally. For every story shared, we could create a social media spotlight, leading to engagement and inquiries that build viral marketing. We can measure sentiment just like we do metrics. It's an opportunity to create a living, breathing inventory of our legacy's impact. For a fleeting moment, she saw something on Greg's face, perhaps respect mingled with a touch of admiration. That shimmer of recognition reassured her. Here was the crux of their conflict. She wasn't just advocating for emotion. She was weaving it into the very fabric of strategy. As the conversation unfolded, Elise felt the fragments of her fear crystallizing into grounded confidence. This was her territory, defending her vision and proving its merit without compromising her integrity. And if we can show tangible results, she continued, it won't just be an emotional appeal. It will be validated by numbers too. We will not only honor our legacy but also redefine what success looks like. Greg's expression soured slightly again, but Elise was resolute. You need to see this potential before you write off the human element entirely. Leadership isn't just about dictating. It's also about listening and adapting. In their charged exchange, Elise discovered a strength she hadn't known existed. Each assertion she made was not simply rhetoric. It was a testament to her growth, a firm articulation of her leadership style, which balanced empathy with action. Let us not act on this hastily, he finally said, his voice calm yet resolute. I can't make guarantees, but I'll bring your proposal to the table with the rest of the board. Clearly, you have made an impression. Elise felt something shift within her, relief mixed with a swell of accomplishment. She had proven that she could articulate her vision with conviction, demonstrating not only her expertise but also her deep commitment to her father's legacy. Walking out of the boardroom, she felt lighter. She had stood her ground, advocating for what truly mattered while embracing her new role as an innovative leader. But more than this pivotal moment of recognition, Elise discovered something essential about herself. She was not merely the daughter of the founder, but a force in her own right, capable of inspiring change through ambition and authenticity. It was time to put the memory wall into action, but also to cultivate those critical connections that would reinforce the identity of the Lakeshore Suites. The challenge ahead didn't frighten her anymore. It invigorated her. As she strode down the hallway, head held high, Elise knew she had achieved not only a victory for herself, but also a step towards preserving her family's legacy. This wasn't just a story about a hotel. This was the beginning of her story, one defined by confidence, growth, and the unwavering spirit of hospitality. And now, for you, the readers, this is the moment to show your support to the channel. Subscribe immediately to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire and uplift. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure our shared journeys reach those who need them most. Comment with your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. The power of storytelling lies in connection. Let's create that together.